What is the scariest encounter with another human you have ever experienced? Story 1. My cousin, who was like 14, was babysitting us, 9-year-old me, 4-year-old brother. Her dad called coming down from, I want to say crack, heroin. IDK something real bad. He called and screamed at her to tell AK where her piggy bank was. She told him to fudge off and hung up. He called back, she didn't pick up, and he left a voice message which played as he was leaving it, saying basically he was gonna come down there and fudge take down all of us. With a knife, he was gonna come down there and fudge eliminate us all. He was full of shoot, but we were terrified. Can you imagine the pure fear a 9-year-old feels when a grown man who sounds crazy says he's going to take down her with a knife? So we prepared. We blocked out the windows, locked everything, put heavy furniture in front of the doors. My brother was asleep in his room. My cousin told me just leave him, but I couldn't stand the thought of him being alone in there. So I covert-style belly crawled, heart beating out of my chest, across the kitchen, through the living room to his room, scooped him up, and brought him back to my mom's room, which we then barricaded ourselves into. I got no sleep that night, and my mom and my aunt came back the next morning like, what the fudge did you kids do? But I was honestly just happy to be alive and that my mom was home again. The worst part of the whole thing is when she got home, her dad had sold all of her belongings. I mean everything, her bed, her dresser, TV. It was all gone. It was just an empty room. He's clean now, but I still dislike his fudge guts. Fudge you, Uncle Donald. Story 2. When I was 15, I regularly was at home by myself, since both of my parents worked full-time and my brother had moved away to college. Well, one day during the summer I was just relaxing at home, when all of a sudden, someone knocks on the front door. I get up and check the peephole and see 2 guys just standing in the driveway just off the porch. One of them wearing a suit, the other wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, but facing away from the house like he's playing lookout. I decide to ignore them, 'cause they'll go away, right? Wrong. They continue knocking, but getting progressively louder and more aggressive. Finally, I decide to call the sheriff's department and ask for a non-emergency check since they're trespassing. My dumbass decides to yell through the door that I had called, and before I can even realize how dumb it is, the guy starts kicking the front door. I freak the fudge out, run back toward the center of the house, and realize that there's a third guy trying to kick in the back door as well. At this point, I call 911 and start screaming about these 3 guys trying to break into my house. Notoriously, it took the sheriff's deputies longer to get there than anyone would imagine, and they see the guys walking down the road later. Stop them to question, but no arrest. Story 3. A delivery driver I used to work with pointed a gun at my head as I was bending down to get something from the cooler I was working near. I cracked a joke about him, honestly forget what, and when I stood up, I felt it at my temple. He started laughing, and I laughed it off too, got him his order ASAP, and when he left I went home and called my boss, and didn't go back till he was fired. Turns out he eliminated himself and his baby's mother a few years after that incident. Answer: yikes. My mom worked the overnight shift at a 7-Eleven through college, and once had an attempted robbery go down. It was about 2 in the morning and this guy comes in with his hand in his coat and demands the money from the till. Mom, who is extremely sleep deprived, thinks he's joking and starts laughing hard, just busting a gut at this. One of those it's not that funny, but I'm laughing too hard laughs. Guy starts to bring out a gun. Mom can't stop laughing at this point Finally, the guy gets freaked out and leaves. It wasn't until minutes later she realized how much trouble she could have been in. Story 4. I was driving through a somewhat rough neighborhood at night, late after a movie, and while sitting at a light, we saw this guy in a beat-up car take a bump of cocaine next to us. We make eye contact. As the light turns green, he merged behind us and then proceeds to follow us around, flashing his lights and honking his horn for several blocks. We pull up to another red light. He pulls up next to us, yelling at us to roll down the window. Turns out he just wanted to let us know we had a tail light out, and then drove away. Story 5. When I was 13, I just got dropped off from the school bus, so I had a bit of ways to walk home. As I get close to the corner of my street, some guy in a dark blue car rolls up and asked where I was headed. Told him I was going home. The guy excruciatingly slowed his car down to match my walk and asked if I wanted a ride home. I told him, no thanks, I'm almost home. Then he continued to ask where I live and if I still wanted a ride home. Luckily, I had a phone at this age and pulled out my Nokia phone. IDK why I remember this and pretend to call my mom. She wouldn't have picked up the phone. And I was almost home. The guy saw what I was doing and sped off like crazy. From the age of 13, I started carrying pepper spray. Answer. This is the second story I've read that happened to me as well. I was around 5, 6, 7. I'm not sure. I was riding my tricycle on the sidewalk, like 7 houses down from mine. This guy pulled up in a maroon, rusted truck and started riding next to me, matching my slow speed. As I sped up, so did he. I pulled into my driveway and ran inside and told my mom. We both look outside and see him sitting in our driveway for like 20 seconds before he pulls off. Never saw him again, but I never forgot. He was a little heavier and had longer hair, maybe in his 40s. This was in East Orlando back in the early 90s. Story 6. In 2012, I was just north of Irwin, Tennessee, while through hiking the Appalachian Trail in the Roan Mountain area. While at our campsite, maybe 25 yards off a dirt forest trail, a blue F-150 pulls up and a man gets out and says he's an undercover forest ranger. Right. He says there's been a lot of kids causing trouble up around these parts. And did we have any guns or substances? It was myself and another older gentleman from New Orleans, who also said he was through hiking, and 2 off-duty Coast Guard who were making a weekend hiking trip together. Before that evening, none of us had ever met. We discuss and decide that the guy was fairly creepy, and decide to split up and scout out maybe a replacement place to camp. We agreed to each hike 15 miles north-south and come back and report if there was a more suitable spot where we were away from the road and the guy would have a harder time finding us. After our little recon trip, we come back and decide there really was nothing all that suitable and decide to just push our tents a little deeper into the woods so as to not be spotted as easily. Around 9 p.m., everyone is in bed and asleep or nearly. 3 gunshots ring out, and they're not often. The distance in less than 5 minutes. A truck comes screaming down the path with the high beams on, and the same guy from earlier gets out, brandishing a Glock with an extended magazine. He's hysterical and tells everyone to get out of their tents and on the ground. For the next nearly 45 minutes, he kept up the charade that he was an undercover game warden and/or fish and wildlife person. The story would change. After a few minutes into the ordeal, it was fairly obvious he was unstable or on something. That didn't change the fact that he had a gun pointed at us. He would rinse and repeat the same lines over and over. 1. Do you have guns, substances, or money? 2. You don't have cash. How will you survive out here? 3. I'm just trying to keep you guys safe. 4. There's 4 of you and 1 of me. You're going to try and jump me. Swing the gun around and brandish it wildly. Rinse and repeat. This whole cycle would usually last 6-8 minutes at a time, and nearly the entire 45 minutes we were either laying on our stomachs or on our knees. Fairly early on, the guy from New Orleans jumped up and ran into the woods, found out later with a cell phone, and called the police. They said it would take them about 45 minutes to make it out to the woods and to hold tight. Of course, I didn't know any of this, and more importantly, the guy holding us up lost his mind. Undercover man shouted into the woods and said that if New Orleans didn't come back, the rest of us would be sorry. The guy actually came back. Seriously, he didn't know any of us. And even today, I genuinely don't believe if I was in his shoes, I would walk back into that situation. It's the bravest thing I've ever seen someone do. The situation ended when the man demanded to search our backpacks for the aforementioned substances, guns or money. He was kind of easing into stage 3 where he's just trying to keep us safe. He leans down to search my backpack, and the 2 Coast Guard guys jump up simultaneously and tackle him. I knocked the gun out of his hand and quickly dropped the mag and discovered that there was a live round in the chamber the whole time. We tied the guy up and waited for the police, who showed up about 20 minutes after. I was incredulous that their response was essentially, "Ooh, that's just crazy, John. He's really done it this time." Or, "Oh, John, they would have been within their rights to shoot you." Dead. For the record, his name wasn't John, but it was very generic sounding. Here's the best part of the story. There was obviously empty bottles of liquor and a film canister with crushed something in it, and a cell phone with 14 missed calls from his apparent son. While this is being searched, it's explained to me that he was a former minister who got struck by lightning and became a pill popper and kooky ever since. He was known for messing with people, but never to that degree before. I ended up finishing my through hike, but that was without a doubt the scariest thing that happened while I was doing it. Story 7. Late 80s, was running errands in town with my mom and 2 sisters. Back then, it wasn't uncommon to leave your kids in the car while you ran inside the store. We are sitting in the car waiting, and then I see an older guy walking towards our car. I just get a really bad feeling and start yelling at my sisters to lock the doors, while I lock the 2 on my side. He comes over and spends the next couple of minutes trying to open all the doors on the car while we are cowering in our seats. Eventually he gave up and left. We were all 8 and under in age at the time. I just knew that if he got in the car, he would take one of us. Answer: this happened at our local grocery store 6-ish years ago. A mom left her 10-year-old daughter unattended in the car. It was hot out, so the windows were down. A man noticed the kid and ran over to the car, yanking the girl by her hair and arms, trying to pull her through the window. The girl started screaming, which caught the attention of another guy who came to her rescue and fought her attacker off. Police never found the creep or the truck he took off in. That little girl, had she not fought as hard as she did, and without the help of Guy 2, would be dead or worse right now, no matter the year, the temperature, the location or type of store. Never leave your kids unattended in the car. There's too many things that could go wrong. I'm sorry you and your siblings went through this, OP. Story 8. In our mid-20s, my husband and I lived in a townhome without a yard in a pretty nice area of town. We knew we were purchasing a house soon, so we went ahead and got our first puppy. I'm a morning person, whilst my husband is not. So I would usually get up around 5 a.m. and take the puppy out to the little patch of grass across the street from our townhome. Still inside the entire complex, mind you. Did this for several months, no big deal. Well, one morning, while out waiting on the puppy, an old Ford van, all beat up with no windows, slowly drives by and goes back behind another building. Oh, few minutes later, as him getting ready to cross the street and go back inside, the van comes back up the road to where I was getting ready to cross, stops in the middle of the road, and turns off its lights. I waved them on in front of me, and at that point, both doors of the van started to open. All I remember was seeing someone start to get out, before both the dog and I felt the undeniable urge to run across the street and inside as fast as possible. Once inside, the van sped off and disappeared. The creepiest part of this whole thing was when I went upstairs to wake my husband, only to find out he was in the middle of a dream where I'd been kidnapped. To this day, I refuse to run outside or go on walks alone, even on our quiet country roads. And big old vans still creep me out. Story 9. I was about 14, 15. School had just ended, so the bus home was packed with other school kids too. We were a couple stops away from where everyone got on, when this guy with a huge jacket, hood up and mask on. We were in the middle of a heat wave so super odd. Got on the bus, stormed upstairs past me and my friends, and threw down this huge bag he was carrying. He screamed, "This is a bomb," and ran off the bus. It took everyone a few seconds to process what just happened. But after those few seconds, I experienced the most crazy panic I've ever seen. Everyone bolted downstairs and tried to get out, but the doors were closed. I remember this huge black dude just punched the glass out of the door like it was nothing, and people were just dragging themselves through it. When I got to the door, I hit the emergency release to make it easier to jump off. Once we were out, we sprinted at least 500 meters down the road and crouched for the explosion. Except there was no explosion. It was just a hoax. Turns out that the guy that did it was someone from my school that had previously been expelled. TLDR, a kid threw a fake bomb on a bus and terrified everyone. Story 10. Me and my boyfriend came back at like 2 a.m. from a night out. We were both quite tipsy and stumbled into the hallway to the elevator when we see drops of something on the floor. It definitely was blood, fresh and wet. The elevator button and door were covered in bloody handprints as well. My boyfriend called the elevator, pushing me aside, not knowing what would be in it. Luckily, nothing except for a puddle of blood. The elevator came from the 5th floor, so we went investigating. The trail of blood ended at a door with huge hand smears of blood on the door. It took all our courage to ring, not the nicest place to live, robbery. But I am so glad we did. An elderly man opened the door. He looked like straight out of a horror movie, covered in blood from head to toe. His gray sweater was red. His hair was wet. His shoes were filled with blood. We immediately sobered up. I called an ambulance, which arrived in 2 minutes. My BF went inside the flat, helping the man sit down. There was so much blood, I've never seen that in my life. We didn't know what happened to him until we met him yesterday properly for the first time. Recognized my BF's glasses. He was tipsy, wanted to ride his bike. Home, crashed somehow, and got a huge cut on his head. He takes heart medicine which thins his blood. That's why he lost so much. If we wouldn't have rung the doorbell, he would have bled to passing. He actually gifted us money and a super expensive bottle of champagne for something completely self-explanatory. Story 11. Tipsy driver tried to mow me down on my moped down a dead-end street. Luckily, I managed to get my bike up the pavement and put a parked car between me and the tipsy, so he couldn't get me. Pretty intense. Answer: I had to sell my car when I was pregnant. It was a lemon and unsafe to drive, so I ended up riding a bike to and from the train station from my flat for work school. I did this until I was about 6 months along. Some jack jerk tried to run me off the road when I was riding back from class at 9 p.m. I was so scared I stopped riding my bike after that and was able to get a new car a month later. Edit. For those throwing shade at the fact that I rode a bike whilst pregnant. I was 22, alone. Friends rarely came to my aid. Parents lived in a different country. The car I owned was a beater that wouldn't have passed an emissions test that I bought for $150. Car insurance in that city was through the roof. So, yeah, I rode my bike to work and school until that incident, and I was able to work something out with a coworker until I bought a new car. Child is now a healthy 6-year-old who likes riding bikes.
Story 12.
Was walking through campus after a night class around 9 or 9:30 p.m. It's a big campus, UCF, and pretty empty at this point. The shuttle I took was at the other end of campus, so it was a pretty long walk. At one point, I'm walking through a swampy area with a raised boardwalk. There are 2 girls a ways ahead of me walking together. I see them reach the end of the boardwalk and go into the next building. As I reach the end of the boardwalk, this guy kinda hops up out of nowhere, the surrounding woods, takes my hand, and starts telling me how beautiful I am. What's my name? What year am I at uni? What am I doing tonight? Where do I live? I ask him why he wants to know, and he says, I'm taking a survey. I'm literally in such shock that it takes me a second to realize he's even touching me. As my hand, everything he was asking me sounded really unauthentic and like it was scripted, like he was in a rush to get everything out. He also had this really weird, unsettling vibe that he was giving off that instantly freaked me out, but it was dark outside and I was all alone at this point. Thankfully, a minute or 2 later, a guy walks out through the building, and I use that moment to break my hand away from the weirdo and tell him I have to go. I've never walked so fast to my shuttle and looking over my shoulder the whole time. I couldn't stop shaking the whole ride home. Something about that guy was off, and I was sure if that man hadn't have come out when he did, that something bad would have happened to me. Exactly what? I don't want to think about. Keep in mind, there had been a group of 2 girls walking ahead of me, and he hadn't approached them. He was looking for a girl by herself. Answer: holy shoot. I've had some pretty scary situations on campus late at night too. One time I was getting out of a late class and waiting for a friend to come pick me up so we could go to the Lazy Moon off Colonial. He said he'd be 30 to 45 minutes. So being the knight that I am, I decide to put up my Eno on the spot, just past the boardwalk, near the mall. While I am just hanging out in my hammock, an older dude walks up to me and pulls a gun and asks me for my backpack. Super scary shoot. I of course gave it to him. He runs away and I lost sight of him when he gets behind the Starbucks. Immediately run the other way towards the all-night study near the towers. Called PD there from a phone. Fudge got away with my computer and cell phone. But hey, charge on, am I right? Story 13. Went down to the local creek with my friend. We were probably 10 or so. The local creepy teenager shows up tipsy out of his mind. I immediately knew this was bad. He mumbles something under his breath, and I looked at my friend with the "we need to get the fudge out of here" look. He stepped closer towards us, and another guy, older and probably twice the size, ran up and grabbed him. He told us to go home and not come back. Later, the creepy guy was involved in a robbery that turned into takedown, and I still feel so thankful to the other guy who was there. Story 14. When I was 3, my mom was driving with me in the back seat. Some dude was just standing in the road with his bike, unbuttoned shirt showing his stomach. She honked at him, and he proceeded to come up to the car, punched my mom's window in, and scream at her, kick the side and front of the car, and ride away on his bike. Mom was super bloody from the glass, and I remember them putting the guy into the back of a police SUV with his bike. Apparently he was on meth. Story 15. I was up in my 3rd floor bedroom having just had a spliff chilling to music with my headphones on when I started to hear weird noises. Naturally, I just thought it was because I was stoned, but it was weird enough for me to take my headphones off. I listened for a bit, and coming from downstairs was a creepy voice I didn't recognize, mixed in with John's, my housemate's voice. But he sounded like he was in pain. I was like, WTF, so I started walking slowly down my stairs, and then looked into his room and saw John on his floor, holding his eyes in pain with a big dude in a hoodie, shouting at him and then grabbing things off the shelves. The next thing I knew, autopilot had kicked in, and I ran towards the room, and the hooded dude turned, ran out the door, when I smashed into him, making us both go tumbling down the staircase, trying to exchange punches on the way down. We scuffled a bit in the hallway until he eventually ran out the door. It transpired that John, who at that time was on crutches, was hobbling home and went to open our front door when the hooded dude came up behind him and pepper sprayed him in his face, blinding him. He then took him up to his bedroom to rob him and his stuff.